This is the second video on elder abuse and neglect, and we are on slide 12, which says criminal versus civil on it. And in the first video, we talked about the different kinds of abuse and neglect. Now we're going to talk a little bit about responses to abuse and neglect, which in Canada aren't very easy. So, while it's true that some aspects of criminal elder abuse and neglect can be easily located and put under criminal code. If you are assaulting somebody, it doesn't matter if the person's old, they're still being assaulted. If you are stealing money from them by forgery or fraud, then you are stealing money from them, regardless of their age. We do use some specific aspects of sections that we are using in a slightly different way than we used to before. So we are using section 215 of the criminal code, which is failure to provide the necessaries of life. And that tends to be kind of the abuse or neglect section if there is going to be a charge. But again, still assault, battery, fraud, as you can see in slide 13, are examples of the common underlying offenses that we will see in elder abuse and neglect. There may also be others. There may be harassment or uttering threats. There may be kidnapping or forced confinement. So there's a wide variety of types of behaviors which we think about as underlying crimes of elder abuse and neglect. But the one that we kind of keep a little bit separately is section 215, and that tends to be the terrible cases of neglect. There's also section 331 of the criminal code, which is theft pursuant to a power of attorney. As an example on slide 14, I put the fact that there's increasing awareness of the criminality of some aspects of abuse and neglect. And I put as an example here some of the ones in Ontario, and I encourage you to look in your particular jurisdiction to see if the same is occurring, where you'll see that there is an obligation for procedures and policies and maintenance and processes for undertaking and maintaining elder abuse and neglect investigations, which may also include vulnerable adult. And you'll see the next slide where there's an example of how challenging it is in reality to work in the area of criminal elder abuse and neglect, how few resources are actually allocated across the country. Some few jurisdictions have a combination of a police officer and a social worker to respond, but very often you're getting maybe one specialized police officer to be a resource for an entire city or regional area. And as an example, I'll just give you a Toronto one. There is one police officer for the entire GTA, and they don't really do their own direct investigations, but there are resources to the other. That's not unsimilar in other places, but what we see is that when resources are getting tight, it's very often that vulnerable person coordinator who is the first one to have their budget cut. I include for you just some interesting slides on the profiles of the victim-accused relationships, and you see that that there's a strong correlation between family and criminality. And then there's the profile of abusers with male and female. There's more male in certain areas and female in the others. And you see as well, I gave you some information about occupations of accused, and you'll see that there are folks in health and social services and others. The next section that we're looking on is the mental health of the accused. And what it's interesting is that we see that there is often a correlation between drug and alcohol abuse or mental health issues, or a combination of all of those things together in an abuser. So there is what we consider a reverse dependency in many cases, where the abuser is actually dependent on the abused. Locations you see of the incident, there's a wide variety of locations, but it's the places where you'd expect it to be, whether there's the victim's home or a nursing home or a joint residence. There are some in terms of types of investigations. Remember, these are criminal investigations, so you see things like at bank ABM and so on included. So that tends to not be the family member as much. They tend to be more stranger crimes, or in the case of a family member where it does occur, it tends to be things like taking someone's debit card and withdrawing money without permission. You'll see also in the next slide that the charging has a very low percentage. So there is significantly undercharging in the areas of elder abuse, often because there's worry about family relationships. People often don't want criminal charges against family members and close friends. There's worries that that the older adult will be seen as incapable, whether that be at some type of a trial or just that it will be so difficult for that person to make it through a criminal trial as a witness that that these matters tend to get dropped. And we will stop at that point and move to the next video for types and indicators of abuse and neglect.